I've always believed in your ability to hit that button. So congratulations.
Well, thank
that
you.
special button.
I spent a shitload of money at the University of Idaho for a degree in broadcasting that enabled me to click the button. Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to an extra special edition of Tubs at the Club. It's our second show in 24 hours, our second show this week. Guys, we're just going to jump right into it. You know who our sponsors are. We'll get to them in a little bit. Martin, I want your immediate reaction to the reason we are talking tonight.
I'm just as shocked as everybody else. Dickert at Wake Forest took a job so quickly. That's what I was thinking we're talking about, right?
Jesus Christ.
No, but for real, I'm excited about the Thomas Ford hire.
Jesus Christ, Martin.
Brian, your thoughts on Coach Dickert leaving the Cougs?
I don't give a shit.
Wait, I forgot the real news. We got Tubbs hit 3,000 followers on Twitter. I will not call it that other name. Thanks for following us.
So everybody, we're obviously fucking around. Thomas Ford is the 37th head coach of Vandal football after our episode last night where we kind of gave a little bit of an infomercial on Thomas Ford. Brian, your thoughts on the newest head coach of the Idaho Vandals?
Exhale, man. It was a rough Ford. It was only like 5 days of, from Eck leaving to where we are now and getting Ford back. But this was a great cap to stem the tide. And hey, we knew, I talked about in the patreon.com /Tubs the Club, #OnlyTubs Discord, where, hey, like if you wanted to stay ahead of the story, that was the single best place to be. Mm-hmm. But I talked about this morning of there's only so much bad news that can happen. It has to turn around. And it turned around in a big way today. Thomas Ford, I think there's a ton of reason to be stoked about Thomas Ford coming back. We talked about his resume last night. We'll probably talk about it a little bit again. Mm-hmm. But my immediate reaction is Idaho needed to get this hire. Like they needed to get this done fast, and they needed a guy who could bring the team together and fill in the gaps. Because no matter what, not all the portal guys are coming back. If any come back, not all are coming back. So we needed someone who could try to bring what he can back together the team. But we also needed someone who we knew could bring together a team and do it fast. And I don't know how you could have done better under all things considered. Thomas Ford did great work at Idaho. There was a gigantic groundswell that started on the internet, but crested beyond the internet into like old school alums and donors, stuff like that. Which isn't to say that's why he got the job. Tom Ford got the job because he deserved the job. But this is one of the weirdest, like happiest Vandal moments I've been a part of. It's not often the fan base seems so united about one thing. And honestly, Dallas, that's where we are.
Yeah. Guys, we have said a lot of things about Terry Godlick on this show. And pretty much all of them still stand. But I got to give it to her, man. This was a hire you absolutely had to get done quickly. It was quite obvious that the players wanted either Jackson or Ford. As soon as Jackson was out, Ford became the guy, and here it is. It feels like it's been 5 months. It's only been 5 days. We've moved on from Jason Eck to Thomas Ford. I couldn't be happier about this, guys. I think Thomas Ford is for sure the best person to have been chosen of any possible candidate. Nick Saban wasn't going to come walking through the door. The folks that were going to take this job, Thomas Ford is the guy I wanted. We talked about it when he got hired 3 years ago under the Eck regime. We talked about it, Brian, that, hey, this is a guy who he's got the charisma, he's got the personality, he's got the contacts. He could be a head coach someday. And here he is 3 years later, back running the show, already getting offers out to guys on Twitter. You're seeing it. There's recruits posting, hey, just got an offer from the University of Idaho and Thomas Ford. If you look at the team that's actually currently Vandals or, portal Vandals, man, there are so many people currently in this program that are thrilled to have Thomas Ford. And, 5 years from now, we'll know for sure, hey, was this the right hire at the time? But today, on December 18th, 2024, Thomas Ford, 100% the best hire we could have seen.
Yeah, and so what are some reasons, Dallas, why we're so all in on this and we think this was the right call? I'll give my first one. Is talked about we need to recruit a team, and Thomas Ford, because of his contacts with brother Tracy at Ford Sports Performance and the fact of where he was at Oregon State, Thomas Ford's been on the recruiting trail solid. This was one of the benefits when Jason Eck came from South Dakota State. Who was Eck going to recruit? Well, the same dudes he was recruiting already. It's slightly different being at Oregon State, but now Ford knows a ton of guys who he's going to be able to say, hey, do you want to go and sit the bench at Oregon State, or do you want to come start and do something at Idaho right now? That's part of how we're probably going to get the roster filled in. The offer we already saw out of Ford was to a guy he was recruiting at Oregon State. Some of those are going to come in because there is a roster that still has to be built. As happy as we are about the many Vandals who showed solidarity with the program, most of them underclassmen, guys who are working their way up. For everyone who stuck it out, thank you. It's hard to stress how big a deal that is. But there are also roughly 20, there's like 20 starting positions that are open because of graduation or transfer. Some of those will be filled by internal development, and that's great. I want guys who stuck with the program to be rewarded or to have the chance to earn the spot, Dallas. Mm-hmm. But we need other guys in. There's no way around it. The roster is going to be put together by new blood coming in, and Thomas Ford, that I said it last night to me, the ace up Thomas Ford's sleeve. Never mind that he was great special teams at Idaho. He was. Never mind that he was great running backs coach at Idaho and at Oregon State. Whatever Oregon State's issues were, it was not the running back room last year. Like, happy to have all that, but the thing that Ford brings to the table, we know he can recruit, and that's the biggest issue facing Idaho right now. They have some spots to fill, and we've got a guy who can do it.
Yeah, that's for me, Brian. That's the biggest one. That's what I'm most excited about. Coach Eck was probably not super thrilled about having to rebuild his roster year in and year out. This year's playoff team, one of the best teams in Vandal history, won 10 games. That does not happen very often in Vandal lore. And the entire offense, outside of the offensive line, the entire offense was pretty much brand new from the previous year, which had been a playoff team that had won a game in the playoffs. That being said, that's kind of the reality of college football. You're no longer just recruiting a guy, getting him to campus, and okay, he's here for 4 or 5 years, and you don't have to worry about it too much. Now you've realistically got to be recruiting 24/7, 365. So what I wanted to see in the hire was the most charismatic and best recruiter that we could possibly have seen. Yes, I know people are not loving that Jason Eck moved on as quick as he did. He gave us 3 phenomenal years. I thank him for his time. He's no longer a Vandal. Hey, good luck to you. Thomas Ford coming back in, I get the same vibe I got from Jason Eck. Players want to play for this guy. People like to coach with this guy. He's a person people want to be around, and he's on a positive trajectory. That's everything to me, Brian. Yes, I know Thomas Ford does not have play calling experience in Division I, and his only head coaching job was a Division II job for a school that doesn't exist anymore. But the context I want to include there, he inherited a team that was on a 33-game losing streak over 3.5 years. He won a single game the very next year and was named Coach of the Year in the conference for it. It was an impossible job. The guy found a way to make it work, and again, put it on the resume of hey,
it turned him into a top 20 D2 passing school.
Yeah,
which relative to what Simon Fraser is, that's a big deal.
Yeah, a very big deal. So I look at that, and I look at what he's done. He had obviously a ton of success here, a ton of success at Oregon State. Yes, their record was not great this year, but Brian, like you said, it was not their running game. I think they ran for 2,200 yards. I could not be more thrilled right now. In a perfect world, Jason Eck doesn't leave midway through the Montana State game. And yeah, you don't have to worry about all of the guys jumping into the portal. But look, all of that happened. So you move forward. How do you best move forward? You bring back one of the guys that was instrumental into changing the culture of Vandal football. It was just 3-4 years ago, guys, that we were talking about this team that got blown out by 50 against Eastern and was just constantly getting shellacked because obviously Petrino was out the door years before mentally, and the players were unfortunately following him because of just how rudderless that program was. X stabilized things. I love Thomas Ford coming in. I think he's got the culture, he's got the attitude, he's got the CEO mentality to take over this program and keep pushing the momentum along. National championships hopefully are coming, but I feel significantly better about Vandal football tonight than I did 2 days ago, Brian.
Yeah, and look, Thomas Ford himself has a really interesting story as far as how he's worked his way up through coaching. We talked about a little bit last night, but he worked his way up from a D3 graduate assistant to the head coach of the University of Idaho. He didn't do that by going to one single stop. He worked his way up from D3, spent some time D2, D3, was a high school coach in Seattle, did a great, that's the other thing referenced in it's not the same as college, but he rebuilt a high school team in Seattle from terrible to powerhouse in 2 years. So he's been a part, I talked about last night, he's been a part of rebuilds in multiple places. He's been a part of changing the culture in multiple places. But to me, it's just pretty wild how he's been able to, after Simon Fraser, that's when he shifted into D1 work. And that was after having, defensive coordinator experience at Division III, Puget Sound, special teams coordinator experience at the D2 level as well. Works at University of Washington, then comes to Idaho, then Oregon State. It's truly an upward trajectory. But he obviously wanted to be a head coach because he's a head coach now, but he's been a head coach at 2 other stops, and they were sub D1 level. So I don't think you take those positions unless wanting to be a coach is not just part of your DNA and who you are. So just the fact of Thomas Ford rising from D3 player, D3 grad assistant to Idaho, it explains to me how, man, he's going to have connections essentially all over the country. And that's only going to help with filling the spots he has. Because we talk about he needs to build a roster. He also has a coaching roster he's going to have to fill. We know that the majority of assistants at Idaho this last year are leaving with Jason Eck. The number is not 100%. So there's probably going to be some guys from Idaho he picks. But he just came from Oregon State. He's got some connections at Oregon State from his time at University of Washington. There's going to be some guys too. As we get our tips on who assistants are, those go in the patreon.com/Tubs of the Club, hashtag only Tubs Discord. We're going to talk about that as they come on the show. If you want to stay connected, that's the best way to stay connected. But there's kind of two missions at once for Ford. Build a roster of players. He's got a coaching roster he's got to put together as well.
Before we get back to that talk, guys, if you're looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, do not look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions is Vandal-owned and operated, and they are ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. You can camp on pristine bitches or beaches, depending on what you're feeling. You can run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, and guys, like I'm always saying, fish the most remote stretches of river in the entire country. Also, be thankful that our athletic director wasn't off on a fishing trip. She got this right. She got the hire in. Thomas Ford is here, guys. What better way to celebrate than taking a trip down the Perseid Meteor Shower? Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Check them out at hughesriver.com or give them a call at 406-540-4450. Brian, the one thing I do want to make sure we mention tonight, for anybody that is here listening that for some reason didn't catch last night's show, or if you're listening on podcast services, if you didn't catch the previous show where we talked about Jason Eck's departure and the timeline of what happened and the possible coaches, we really did mostly just leave an infomercial for Thomas Ford in the middle of that show. We did a lot of talk about Bobby Daly as well, and I think Bobby Daly would have been a fine coach, but it circles back to the same thing that we just spent the last 15 minutes talking about, Brian. At this level, the game is about Jimmys and Joes. There have been so many coaches throughout history that have said that. You can't even attribute it to one guy anymore because it's been said for so long. Man, Thomas Ford is that guy. It's just hitting through the comment section. There are so many folks pointing out like, hey, I'm pretty sure there's Jerem Taylor. I believe he got us Dwyer. Pretty sure Marquand McCraney came through there. I know Chance Bogan hasn't exploded the way that we've all hoped. Hopefully we'll see that as his upperclassman years approach. But any big name that has been a big recruit that's come to Idaho, a lot of them have had ties to Thomas Ford. And that's not going to go away because Tracy, thankfully, is a Vandal, is still running Ford Sports Performance. And now there's a built-in, hey, my brother runs an FCS team. If you're looking for playing time in the Pacific Northwest, you're probably going to be able to find it here. Idaho has not shied away from playing underclassmen under Jason Eck. I don't know if that's going to continue with Thomas Ford, but it feels like this is a continuation of the good vibes that the program has had the last 3 years. And we haven't had a whole lot of those recently. Vandal legend Ryan Phillips, Ford hire is more exciting than Eck because we've now seen what's possible because of Eck after a few years wandering the desert. I would venture to argue, Ryan, that it's been more like 3 decades of wandering the desert. But this is, man, the doom and gloom I felt, Brian, this weekend of, wow, Jason Eck is gone. What is going to happen? All of those fears are gone for me. Yes, Idaho might not win 10 games this year. It's tough to project that on a first-year head coach. But for me, couldn't have landed this ship any better with a chance not only to build for the future, but to also retain the team that's currently out there and hope that the Vandals are just going to keep on winning.
Yeah, the thing that I'm looking at as far as, again, there's a ton of dominoes to fall and left over, and it's all going to be recruits and who the coaching staff rounds out to be. We know this is a very, very fast-moving situation. By the way, different from when Jason Eck was hired. That was actually kind of a slow-moving train with how that went. Tom Ford, to our knowledge, interviewed would have been within a day and was hired today. So that's a very fast turnaround. The transfer portal guys for Idaho, they're not all off the table. We should assume a good number of them, though, are, because guys have been seeing a lot of attention, at which, hey, credit to the guys who earned attention from other schools. I want to see what happens to Jack Lane. As far as returning players, Jack Lane is a huge domino to fall. And the other big domino to fall is can we pull back a couple of those O-linemen? Because we saw a lot of development on the offensive line. I'm sure guys like Aiden Knappick, who are getting Power 4 offers, man. Very happy that you were here. But there's some guys we can get back, and the O-line, as we've just seen in the Big Sky, like that is, if you want to be a powerhouse in the Big Sky, you got to be strong up front. Doesn't matter if you want to pass the ball or run the ball. If you do not have a strong O-line, you will not beat Montana State right now. You will not be able to handle. I mean, honestly, even University of Montana is going to be better in that direction. So if Idaho can keep some of the O-line recruits, that's a big deal. But this is there's just a lot of anxiety, I think, that goes away with this hiring. We've seen Thomas Ford do very good work here, and look at special teams. Like you said last night, no shot to Tyler Sutton. Special teams was fantastic those 2 years under Thomas Ford. Was not fantastic this past year. Yes, players turning over matters, but coaching turning over matters too. Players will always turn over. Both they structurally do anyway, because you're only in college for 4 or 5 years. But in the transfer portal era, people change. So what you need is a program that has next man up mentality, and also has the coaching to coach people up to be the next man up. We have only seen good coaching out of Thomas Ford. And we just know if you've ever met the dude, he's got the personality to be energetic. He's got the personality to be a closer as a recruiter, because obviously he's already done it. And he's got the type of personality that I think is going to broaden the Idaho tent to bring in more and more people, both as donors, but also as fans. It's really hard for me to think of ways where this hire on paper. We will eventually play games, of course. But as of today, December 18th, I don't know how this would be done better. And I don't know a way to set this up to give Vandals who are all in on Jason Eck more confidence that this will continue. And I don't know, again, I think Thomas Ford's going to be great at reaching out. That's the one thing that I want to credit Boise State for. Is Boise State has been very good in the state of Idaho about finding ways to make everyone feel like they can be part of the Bronco family. Say whatever you want to about that family, use whatever descriptors you want to about that family, but Boise State has capitalized on making people in the state of Idaho feel like they can be part of that. Montana State has done that in the state of Montana, and I went to that Montana State game. You can tell the benefits of that are people show up, there's money, there's energy. I think there's reason to believe Thomas Ford is the kind of guy who can capitalize on the good stuff from Jason next time. But this isn't going to be just a Jason Eck rinse and repeat. There's going to be some things that are different. And I think this is the next step. And this is probably going to be the type of developmental step Idaho needed to be able to broaden its base.
Yeah, now, this doesn't excuse the errors of the administration. Guys, you got to buy in on NIL. Eli Gilman is coming back to Montana, and good old Grizzlies, their NIL collective was pimping it out to everybody that would hear it. Hey, we brought Eli Gilman back. That's the same kind of energy Idaho has. I know it's in there. We've seen it in our Discord. We've seen it in the people listening. We've seen it in the Dome. The Dome was crazy loud for only having 7,500 people in the Dome for that playoff game this year. There are people that want Idaho football to succeed. How do you succeed in 2024? NIL. You have to buy into it. You have to start cooperating with this. The 1889 guys have money that's waiting to be distributed to players. Idaho's just got to get on board to make everything connect so that this can keep moving forward instead of seeing the roster turn over year after year after year after year. So there are still some things. This is certainly not a perfect job, but Brian, for everything that we know about Thomas Ford, he is the guy that I would trust to be able to build off of this. You saw it with Jason Eck. Jason Eck was very good at getting to people and connecting with people and making people like invested in Vandal football again. Thomas Ford has that exact same energy. I'm stoked. I'm thrilled. I'm excited. I don't have enough words, guys, to explain. I feel great about this hire. And yes, we're going to have to see what the coordinators are going to look like. Here's a hint. If you're on the Patreon, you already know about the offensive coordinator and you have some leads on the defensive coordinator. You got a pretty good idea of what's going to be looking like the future of Vandal football for the next couple of years. So again, patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. But I'm thrilled. This is also, again, we talked about it last night. The portal is more full than it's ever been. So yes, not every guy is going to come back. I would love to see Jack Lane come back. Obviously, Jack Lane was an outstanding quarterback last year. Thank you, Elizabeth Hammer, in the comment section. Dallas is really excited because he normally has a lot of words. Fuck off, woman. So what I'm getting at is this team is going to look different than they did last year. Yes, 100%. Like, not all those guys are going to come back. Going to have to land some dudes, but Thomas Ford has proven for years he is very good about bringing talent in. I think with the quarterbacks, I was so stunned and blown away by the leadership of the quarterbacks that didn't go into the portal. Wagner, Joseph, Koch, and B, all four of them posting about, hey, we're going to stick here. Vandal football, ride with us. We're going to win a natty. We're going to do this here. V's up, like all very, very heavily invested in pro Idaho. Now, I don't know if Jack Lane's coming back or not. Hopefully he is. If he is, man, I think we've got a pretty loaded quarterback room. But again, guys, I know Jack Wagner had his ups and downs throughout his freshman season. He was recruited by Montana State. Tommy Malott did not have much of an arm until he got towards his junior and senior season, when all of a sudden he started learning how to dissect defenses. Tom Kendall, Dallas in Doghouse tonight. Chuck Caswell, so you're saying Dallas has trouble performing when he's overly excited? Yes. Guys, if you're not bought into Vandal football now over the last 3 seasons, I question what you're doing. If you're not bought into, hey, look, for all of Terry Golick's faults, she absolutely nailed this hire. This is what the fans wanted. This is what the players wanted. For everything we know, this was the best guy for the job, and he wanted the job. He got the job, and now we get to see what is that next evolution of Vandal football. When was the last time we had a coaching staff that left because they were successful, and then we had a previous assistant on that staff want to come back and take over? There is continuity here. It is not a full reset. Yes, things are going to change, but Vandal football has been set up for success better than they have in, honestly, most of my life. And I don't see any reason to not be all aboard for Ford tonight.
Yeah, I don't either. So this is obviously a Snake River 1915 small batch night. So hey, Snake River, two whiskey options, the Stampede or the 1915 small batch. Both are 3-grain whiskeys, 80% corn, 10% rye, 10% malted barley. But hey, Thomas Ford, man, you got to celebrate with the small batch. That's double barrel finish of first fill bourbon, then finished in ex-Canadian rye whiskey casks. Grab yourself a Snake River, celebrate a good day.
And then Duffer raining on my parade. Duffer's Tavern in the comment section. Nick Holt was an assistant who then came back. We don't talk about Nick Holt in this room. That was the one and only time. You're not talking about him ever again. Thanks to the folks shouting out my hat in the comment section. And then Elizabeth Hammer in the comment section saying what is going on in the back of my brain. Let's hope Terry Golick doesn't fuck anything up any more than she already has. The jury's still out on that, but hey, today nailed the hire. Thomas Ford, 37th coach in Vandal history. Brian, any final thoughts? Anything you wanted to get off your chest about this?
I mean, some of the stuff you said, hey, Golick did move fast on this. We are not above complimenting people we disagree with when they do the right thing.
Yep.
And just move fast. This need to move fast. I said on the show, we'll know if this is done by Friday, then the legwork that needed to be done was done. It's Wednesday.
Yep. So,
hey, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Doesn't change other things, but we've got no problem telling people when they did a good job. So, yeah. Admin Golick, thank you. We needed this. You did it.
As fair or unfair as it is, getting football right matters a whole lot more than everything else. As shitty as that is for the girls in the volleyball program that were abused and belittled and not treated the way they should have been, and you get football right, and a lot of things get kind of washed away.
Yeah.
She nailed football tonight.
Yeah. We're going to quit talking about the admin. Then the other thing is, hey, just for show purposes, guys, we've done this before, so we know what this is going to mean. Like as we have batch news about things like recruits and things like new, like the coaches who are on here. We're gonna talk about the new hires. We're gonna talk about the new coaching staff. It's a weird like rinse repeat thing that I'm happy to be able to do. The fact of And honestly, look, Thomas Ford got the job because he deserved the job. The groundswell could not have hurt, but the groundswell did not give him a contract, guys. So I'm stoked to see what the next steps are. Idaho's made the final eight the last 2 years, and there's a lot of guys who have to be replaced. We're miles away from talking about what expectations could possibly be for next year because there's not a roster and there's not a complete coaching staff. There's a ton of work to do, but we have a guy who already has an offer out. So, man, I guess that was actually a thing I forgot to talk about last night was the fact of Ford recruiting at the area. We've hit the FSP thing 1,000 times. We'll probably do it 1,000 times again. That plus the fact of him being at Oregon State means he's going to have I don't think it's going to be as big a lift for him to do this as if it were Bobby Daly. I think that would be the big challenge for Bobby Daly would be getting a roster together. It's the next thing for Ford to do, but I don't know if you'd call that. I don't even know if you'd call that a challenge. That's his wheelhouse. That's the thing he does. So I don't know, man. It's a good day to be a Vandal. There's a lot to be. I think there's a lot to be happy about. It's also cool that what feels like the right call was the call that Vandal Nation really wanted. Completely different than the last time when it's the complete reset. I mean, and Golick shouldn't necessarily care what like the fan base is saying. Like, hey, listen to the fans too much. You should be sitting with them pretty quick, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's nothing to say that it's a good and kind of just weird situation that the person who is the right guy is also the person who everyone was saying is the right guy. It's like a synchronicity that I don't know if we're ever going to get to experience this again. I certainly have never experienced it as a Vandal. I've only heard of very rare instances where other places seem to do that. Like, I mean, hey, like say what you want about Bobby Houck, but when he was brought back to Montana, there were a lot of people who wanted him. This is a different version of that, but like, it was a celebration at Montana when Houck came in. This is the same thing. When Eck was hired last time, it was excitement more because of what he might be ushering in. Mm-hmm. This is both the same and different with Ford. It's a weird, to me, unbridled excitement that I hope the athletic department's able to capitalize on. That's the next thing they need to do. Because now Ford's job, I don't think Ford's job is to make this excitement turn into ticket sales. His job is to get a kick-ass team and a kick-ass coaching staff and take care of it on the field. It's other people's job to fill the seats. But I don't know, man. It's honestly like one of the challenges for me here because you and I clearly wanted Thomas Ford. There's no way to listen last night and not come across the fact that this show really wanted Thomas Ford to be hired.
I mean, it was in my graphic. It's still in my graphic tonight.
Yeah. It's honestly weird running a show covering Idaho sports that now like we're going to have to figure out how to negotiate this because you and I could be founding members of the Thomas Ford fanboy club right now.
100%. Yes.
And you know what? We have time to do that because Vandals right now, you should be all in on being fanboys. That's all you can do right now is be all in on being fanboys or girls. So let yourself celebrate. Like I said, pour yourself a 1915 small batch. Today is nothing but a good day. We can celebrate and take the win.
Yeah, exactly. And keep this in mind, guys, I'm not saying these players are going to leave, but let's say Aiden Knapik does take a spot in the Big Ten. Jordan Dwyer does go to USC. Andrew Marshall ends up at Nebraska. Jack Lane moves on. Like you go through the roster and yeah, let's say all of these guys move on. Yes, that's unfortunate, but don't forget Eck has been recruiting guys for years. There are 2 major recruiting classes that are mostly still intact here. Thomas Ford is a great recruiter. The portal is loaded. There is going to be talent to be had here. What we didn't want to see was essentially a fire sale on Vandal Athletics and see essentially the entire thing stripped to the bone. That's not going to happen. The base is still here. You saw it from how many players were posting about they wanted Thomas Ford. They want to be here. They want to continue Vandal football the way it currently is because guys are having fun. They're winning and they're having fun. You can't really ask for a whole lot more when you're a college kid. Maybe some free beer, I guess. But that's really all you can ask for is to win games and have fun doing it. I don't see any reason to believe right now that that's not going to continue. fully on board the Ford train, Brian.
Yeah, I said it in different ways about Jason next time of, hey, when you're in the good old days, you got to buy in because you don't know when the good old days end. I feel like we got a reprieve here where, I mean, look, hey, the PTSD of Eck leaving was, hey, does this all go away? And look, no coach has a higher approval rating than before they've coached their first game. Like, we know that. But who gives a shit? Enjoy giving him your 100% approval rating right now. Get all in and be happy about the fact that a lot of what people were scared might go away when Jason Eck left. Well, we have lots of reason to believe a lot of good stuff is going to stay. And there's some, there's going to be some changes to the program because Thomas Ford's a different guy. There's some different DNA he has, of course, or I'm saying that like metaphorically. There's some, the program he's going to put together is going to have some different characteristics than what Jason Eck did. But the blueprint of Ford, the blueprint we're going to see out of Ford, I'm just going to be floored if it doesn't turn out to be energetic, great with outreach, great with recruiting. And our only evidence of Thomas Ford as a coach at Idaho is him taking care of his business. So we get to see him do that in a different role. But the only thing you can do as a fan right now, give yourself permission to get all in.
Yeah. Hit that VSF fund, scream at the admin through every social media channel you have, through email, please don't scream at them on the phone, but reach out to the admins and let them know, hey, we need to get this NIL off the ground because we want to beat the shit out of the Grizzlies and eventually the Bobcats too. The Grizzlies are a much easier target at the moment, but man, if you want to fight with the Montanas and the Dakotas, you've got to buy into NIL. You can't artificially cap it. You can't just completely ignore it and hope it goes away and that college football goes back to the way it was in the 80s. That's not happening. Change is inevitable. Change has come. It's time to understand. Let's get on board with the changes. Let's support Thomas Ford in ways that Jason Eck wasn't supported. Let's get him an NIL collective to do something with. That will keep guys like Jack Lane here for longer. I can't fault a kid for jumping into the portal to go get paid. But if he can get paid a little bit more to play here in Moscow, Idaho, man, I don't see why that would be a problem for people. Tom Kendall in the comment section. Okay, I guess I'm back to attending the VSF Gala in Boise again. James Jacobs, adapt or die. Tom Kendall, I nominate Dallas NIL director. I don't have the patience for that, Tom, and I swear way too much. I love that. I think I have the energy of like this. This is why this is needed, but I'm not a PR guy. That's why Brian typically keeps me on a leash here, because I do have a tendency to say fuck way too many goddamn times. Anyways, with that said, guys, patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. If you want to keep up on this news, again, people that were in the Patreon knew that Thomas Ford was going to be probably the head coach before anybody else did and before it was publicly available. That's been the case for a lot of news throughout this cycle. It's going to probably continue to be the news as assistants come in, Brian.
Well, I mean, that was that's one of the things we do work hard for, guys. That was also the case when Jason Eck was here. So that's been persistent. That's part of what we try to do. I think we got to call this a night.
Absolutely. That's why we were circling the bases to use another football term, because that's definitely football. Mark Triple Piece in the comment section. We don't need to talk to the admin. We need to just donate. It's fair, Mark. It's fair. With that said, guys, go Mighty Vandals.
Go Vandals. This is producer Brian doing a terrible job of even finding what we're going to play us out with. So we're just going to call it good. See you guys Tuesday. Motherfucker.
Go Vandals.